Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Always ready to grab you and shake you up if you're too sleepy. Life is out to keep you on the best path for yourself and everyone around you. It does not always seem like it when you're facing down the darkness or the depths of hell, but it really is true. My beautiful soul of a guest today is here to prove it and also to help you go through your own deepest transformations in order to come out the other side with exactly the gifts that make you happiest and most whole while also serving the rest of humanity. Beth Martens, thank you so much for being here today.
What a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Before we jump in, let me remind all of you listeners out there that Rogue Ways is part of the Eyes Open Network. This collective of creators is comprised of myself, Benjamin Balderson of Odin's Alchemy, Claude Furry of Talking Nonsense, Steve Poikonen of Slow News Day, and John Brisson of FixYourGut.com. These incredible creators get together to deliver a State of the Union once a month where you can expect wacky antics, topical, philosophical wanderings, and nearly illegal amounts of fun. And also, the Eyes Open Network has a collective of services and goods that you can trust from minds that are woke and hearts that are open through the Eyes Open Network page on rogueways.org. So go check it out to support some badasses who have your best interest at heart. And now, for the pointless question of the episode, Beth, what do you think about the role of the villain, whether in our narratives or our lives?
Oh, fascinating question. And, I think the villains are not aware of their role, and yet they have that role in our lives. And it's, I'll say, can I swear on this podcast?
Absolutely.
It's, the role is to bring our shit up. Because the fact is that if that shit doesn't come up, then we can't deal with it. We can't let it go. We can't even see it or know that it's there. So if you can't see it or know it's there, then you can't do anything about it.
Oh, I like that. That is excellent. Because I always want to find a way to, I guess, take whatever negativity I find in my life and try to turn it positive, not by ignoring it. I don't want to ignore the negative, but I want to figure out like what I can use it for. Because I feel like there has to be something that it serves, or why would it exist, right? So I like that way of looking at that. That's pretty beautiful.
Yeah, it never, I think, lets anybody off the hook. It never lets a villain out of the responsibility for their actions. And yet we all have to respond and, do what we can to get more and more free on this planet so we can use evil for our own good, basically.
Right. And I like that any evil could also be using that as a chance to stop being evil, to look at themselves and be like, oh, wait, I don't want to hurt people after all, or see themselves in where they're actually at. Because I like what you said, that their villains don't know that they're villains. Everybody's kind of wandering around doing what they think is actually best. And then it makes me wonder, like, how often have I been a villain? Probably at some point, right? Like right. Sometimes that I know of, but other times that I probably have never realized.
Yeah, and I make one distinction also these days between, say, a villain who has a soul, and then it's just an unconscious expression of the archetypes that I work with, for example. We can talk more about that. And then there's the soulless villain. And this I never used to believe in, like pure evil.
Yeah.
But I do believe that once it gets to that stage of the soul not being connected with that villain, that, because I had the same view that people didn't intend harm, it was incidental, or it was just out of ignorance. But now I see there's actually intention going on at that level. So it's good to make that distinction.
So do you have an example of what something or someone that people might know or be able to recognize that you would give an example of the souled, sort of not evil, but villainous sort of being or entity, and then the soulless pure evil, so that people can help differentiate?
Yeah, I just thought of a child, for example. So anybody in your audience that has children, they know that their children show up as villains at times in your life, right? So I went through a phase with my son when he was really unhappy and we weren't getting along, and there was a lot of battles between us, and he was really intensely abusive to me. Right. And but that's not coming from a soulless place. That's him acting out. That's playing out that dynamic in our relationship. And it was highly, remedial is what I wanted to say. It was, by doing internal work on myself, not on him, right? Because
Right.
that's exactly what brought about the situation, trying to work on him.
Yeah.
But when I worked on myself and I got to the bottom of exactly what those triggers were, and became a much happier person, then all of a sudden he transformed without any work on him, so to speak.
Yeah. Oh, that's
So
fascinating.
yeah, that's my
And
first example thought.
I'm sure I was a villain to my mother too. I can think of the times. And I'm sorry, mom. Mothers are saints. Mothers are like the best people in the
They
universe,
really,
I'm pretty sure.
they really are.
All right, so
So
let's go to the roots for your life. What was your earliest life like?
it was a mixed bag. I grew up in a family that was, my dad was, for his, say, the first 10 years of my life was in jobs and working for people, and really intensely miserable with that. He's a lead. He was a leader. He's passed now, but he had that blood in him that was designed to lead others and to call the shots and to create from his own vision. So it really was a severe source of unhappiness for him to be in jobs that didn't, respect him, didn't honor his opinions, didn't consider him a leader.
Mm.
And so by the age of 10, my parents got together, decided to quit their jobs and start a business together. And so I was born and raised in an entrepreneurial kind of world that was good in a lot of ways. And then also because it was so risky, right? Like they assumed so much responsibility for themselves. My dad, he had enormous responsibility. He had a big staff. He had to keep in paychecks. He was taking care of us kids. He had my mom to take care of. He had clients to take care of. He had the government and the bank to take care of. And so that was really heavy. And I think at the same time, I was just writing about this today. I think at the same time, I was really being influenced by the growing feminist movement that was constantly giving us this message that we weren't as good as men, that we weren't equal to men, that we had to fight for this equalness. And it wasn't the only source of it, but I know I ended up giving my dad a lot of bad action as a result of it,
Yeah.
and not giving him the respect that he deserved. So I was a very rebellious, angry kid. I
It was
saw,
like, sorry, it was like that narrative got placed in your head and you like chose him to be the villain of that story for you.
yeah, nice,
Okay.
nicely
Yeah.
said. Exactly. I take full responsibility for it because not everybody was doing what I was doing, but there was lots of, women complained about men all the time, telling them, oh, they didn't put their socks in the right place and they were never around the house and didn't take the garbage out, and not giving respect for what they were actually doing, which was
Yeah.
keeping house and home completely together.
Yeah.
But the rebel spirit pretty much took over. By the time I'm a teenager, I was, I ran away 4 times, got out of the city, just got mixed up with all the wrong people. And when I was growing up, I noticed that the world was basically upside down, that nothing made sense. I was the only one who noticed it. Everybody around me seemed to be fine with everything that was going on that was wrong. And I just kept being the person who said the things that nobody wanted to hear and nobody wanted to say.
Yeah.
So I was kind of prickly. I was that rebel without a cause. I fought a lot. And then there came a point where I decided that I needed to put a wrap on that, it got me in a lot of trouble. I was kicked out of several schools and I spent a night in jail, and I, like I said, mixed up with all the wrong people out in the world. And so I thought to myself, very unconsciously, I didn't even know I was making the decision to do that, but I put a foot on the head of that rebel and said, like, no more, we're done. I'm
Yeah.
going to be a good one now.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm gonna
going
be
to
a
go
good
to
girl.
school. Yeah, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to get straight A's. I'm going to go into business. So I went to work in my family's business, thinking that that was normal and, respectable, and that would have me grow up and assume responsibilities compared to that rebel without a cause. And that nearly killed me because I was really super out of alignment with who I was at that time. And, it was the first window I had into, like, you can't just push an important part of yourself away and expect there to be no internal repercussions for that. So, by the age of 25, I'm a VP in marketing with my family's firm. And then by 29, I was diagnosed with a stage 4 lymphoma and nearly dropped dead.
Oh my God.
So that was my child.
And that the part of yourself that you think that you were pushing away, was that connected to the rebellious part of you? Because you describe it like you're a rebel without a cause at that time. But if you're seeing like the way that the world is lopsided and you're actually calling attention to that, like I feel like there's some sort of cause there. And was that sort of part of you, the part that you were ignoring when you were becoming a VP in your family's company? Or is there something more to it that you were not nurturing?
Yeah, it was a very mixed bag, because the call of that rebel really is to be able to focus down and see, okay, what's my fight to fight on this planet?
Mm-hmm.
And if we get up in arms about everything that's wrong that's going on, then we'll be consumed with anger and we will lose our energy to that. You stop being on purpose and you're just like a fight waiting for a place to happen. Rebels without a cause, they would rather fight than work.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When they get bored, they fight. They're looking for some excitement. So those kind of things where it's a lot of unnecessary fighting going on. And I was seeing some level of truth, but because I filtered it through this really unconscious place, then I couldn't influence anybody in a positive way or create any change. That's the bright side. The awakened side of the rebel is really being able to make those changes that you see in the world. You can't do that without focusing. So
it makes sense to me. I see it a lot too as a teacher. A lot of students will have that rebelliousness that's sort of aimed at nothing in particular. And I always kind of feel like, well, you should be rebelling. Like there's a lot to fight against, but you're not actually fighting against anything worthwhile. Like you're not, finding a problem and then figuring out how to change it, work around it, or, whatever it is you want to do with that. You're just, being angry at people who love you. So, so I can see it very commonly in youth in general, and in myself growing up as well. So yeah, stage 4 lymphoma. That's intense. How did that go?
Yeah,
Obviously,
very
you're still with
dramatically. Exactly. Yeah, it was a big shock to me. I actually thought they were going to tell me I was being a hypochondriac and just go back to work. But when I went off to get my results of those tests that I got, it just the white screen when your computer dies and
the white screen of death or something.
The screen of death or the blue screen of death. Yeah, it was kind of that, like just everything dissolved. I never went back to my office. It was an opportunity. I was praying for a way out, really, and so I got it, but not the one that I would have been actually really good for me if I'd done it in time. So that I definitely see as a mistake, and that my life is a cautionary tale.
Do you think if you would have left on your own terms before that you wouldn't have gotten lymphoma? Like you think that it was a result of like not kind of facing reality or the truth of it?
Yeah, exactly. Having said that, the jury's still really out, because there's the possibility that we can't make substantial changes or choose in favor of our calling without some kind of a cyclone, some kind of a massive takedown, breakdown. I see it in the clients that I work with, that if they're busy trying to prevent the breakdown, and mostly that's what we're unconsciously trying to do, then we just perpetuate and go forward. And even though it's a kind of misery, we keep on with it, because it's, following our calling. It's basically, according to our ego side, it's like calling in our death. Yeah. Right. The ego wants us to stay safe and doing the predictable things and the easy things and having others control us, because when you're in your calling, then you're truly assuming responsibility for yourself. So that's where I, was able to turn that corner. So, I put my life up as a kind of cautionary tale, don't do what I did. And yet at the same time, there might be wisdom in just saying like, yeah, that cyclone is going to come one way or the other. We have breakdowns, we get sick, we lose our lives, we lose loved ones, we get in car accidents, things like that happen. And trying to prevent them just ends up being soul death.
Yeah, because I feel like that's the same thing that, it's you go into that sort of dark night of the soul at some point. It's the same sort of thing as these crisis moments or these moments that you're talking about. And that's exactly where you kind of pare away everything that isn't you and get down to like that nugget that really, really is you. And then you come back out of that, but now you have this, beautiful truth about yourself and you're stronger for it. Right.
Exactly. Because sometimes until you lose everything, you can't see who you are. Right? That everything was stripped away from me. I lost my job. I lost my house. I lost my car and my cats. And, you name it, everything that I considered to be me. I lost my hair. I lost my ability to use my hands. I lost my finally ability to sit up and, just have the breath go through my body. And it was in that moment where I thought I was going to die that I had a total breakthrough and I saw, no, like there I am with nothing. But there I am, totally full, totally complete, nothing missing, no pain, no sorrow, pure joy. Right. So I don't know if I could have seen that.
Right. I mean, I feel like people work to see that for years and years and years through meditation or something, like as a practice to like get to that point, but you're, offered it in this moment of absolute desolation, basically.
Exactly. Because surrender is such a big part of it, that we give up our sense of that. Oh, because we're brainwashed in a society. Like you just need to keep taking on new parts of yourself in order to become fulfilled and happy and whole, as if like, you just you add money and you add credentials and you add relationships and you add possessions. And then, at some point you're supposed to get happy from all that stuff, right? And
eventually we'll be happy.
That's right. Yeah. It's not to say people shouldn't have that stuff, but if it's the illusion that it's going to, create in us something that we don't have, then we're destined actually for some breakdown to show us.
Yeah. Amen. Well said. So that experience of seeing your true self, I mean, what did that do in the moment and how has it changed you since?
Yeah, it was a complete game changer. I consider it a near-death experience. I didn't go down the tunnel, but I did think I was losing my life. And I saw some really important things about myself. I saw that I had this blueprint. I had this purpose. And I saw that I don't get out of it, that whether I was to live on in that moment or I was going to die, I was just going to have to come back and do it all over again and fulfill on that. I saw that not only do we have a purpose, but that we are intimately connected with other people as a result of that purpose, that blueprint is what ties us into humanity and gives us that desire to contribute and be part of a greater human tribe. So those were the main takeaways, and it was forever changed who I am.
It's amazing. I had this experience and I was just revisiting it last night actually, where I had this very profound realization that things were sort of almost pre-planned or predestined. And I had like the day before I had the realization, like a sort of shaman, they're not called shamans, but it's the same sort of role, tell me, he actually laughed at me like I was a stupid little child and told me that I don't get to make plans, that the universe makes plans for me. And I was kind of like, whatever, this guy. I mean, like I respected him and I was grateful for the other things that he had given me, but I was like, I don't really buy that. And then the next day it was shown to me in a profound way. And I was like, wow, I really don't think that we do get to make plans, like not consciously at least. And what you're describing seems to be that same sort of idea that there is a plan. Maybe there's kind of different choices you get to make along the way that kind of veer this way or that way, but there's going to be, like you're saying, like the blueprint, like the main points are going to kind of be there for you to accomplish. And then also that idea that if you don't do it this life, you're going to come back and do it in another way, in another life. You don't get away from it. That's a concept that I've heard before as well. But you found all of that just through personal revelation, which is kind of stunning.
Yeah, well, it's amazing when you're forced, when your back's up against a wall.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's I like the way that Carolyn Myss puts it, and Carolyn Myss, I don't know exactly. I think it's Myss, how you say her name, an author that she wrote the Sacred Contracts. And so she puts it out as a kind of agreement. So it's really beautiful because it's not like it's God's just going, okay, here's what you're going to do. Here's your mission on earth and you got to fulfill it. I don't care how hard it is. It's like, no, we actually made the agreement with ourselves and it's divinely supported. But that's why we can, for example, refuse our call, right? Like we are beings of free will. So we can spend the entire lifetime refusing to do what we're meant to do. And so we have that constant choice. Every single moment is an opportunity to either choose to work with that blueprint or work against it and try to suppress those parts of ourselves. So it's a constant, it's a constant co-creation between us and the divine. And I coach about this constantly, that people are often waiting for, someone said it today, it was like, well, I don't have the energy of confidence and this surety in myself. And I'm waiting for that to do anything. And it's like, no, it works the other way around. You do stuff and then you have the confidence and then you have that surety in yourself, right? So that's where you got to give God something to work with. You get out and you do something, and even if it's the quote unquote wrong thing to do, then you learn instantly. But without doing that thing, you couldn't know it's the wrong thing.
Agreed.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of purpose is actually doing the wrong thing, taking the risk of making mistakes and finding out what you don't want, what's not in alignment with you. So that's why, going to work in the business world, in the marketing field with my family's firm, that definitely wasn't a mistake. I wouldn't be who I am right now, but it clearly showed me like, yeah, this is not your business path.
Well, maybe you needed to experience it in order to really accept it as true too, right? Like if someone would have just told you that ahead of time.
Oh. Exactly. Couldn't tell me anything. Exactly. Yeah. Then I'm of two minds with this too. We have to make our own mistakes, but it's great when you can watch somebody else make a mistake, because maybe you don't have to make every single one of them yourself.
Yeah. That's like the other hope of every mother for their children, right? You're like, just at least take some of these lessons from me and don't like find them all out on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
So I lost my train of thought of what I wanted to ask you next. That's unfortunate.
No worries.
Maybe it'll come back to me. All right. So then after you've had these realizations, where did that take you in life? Like where did you go from there?
Well, I went into remission. I thought I was dying, but I actually was able to, through that breakthrough, went into remission. And for the next 18 months was actually unable to recover from all of the chemotherapy that I had done, even though I was like technically in remission according to tests, but I never did get my energy back and was diagnosed a second time. This time they decided that I wasn't going to survive the second diagnosis of a Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's considered fatal. Oh. And I was recommended to do a stem cell transplant. I went into daily chemotherapy and then they wanted me to do a stem cell transplant. And it was at that time when it's a very awful procedure. It takes a year to even begin recovering from a stem cell transplant. It's devastating, absolutely devastating. They almost kill you so that your body will produce stem cells. Then they harvest the stem cells and they give them back to you as a means for surviving. So it's just like horrendous, right?
So weird.
It's awful. Yeah, my brother-in-law died that way. Wow. So I thought about, okay, well, what am I doing here? Am I trying to protect my body? Am I trying to protect my life at all cost? If I was to survive, what am I going to be on the other side? Even if like The Walking Dead or something, it felt like so, and not to mention all the suffering along the way. And I was very tuned in at that point that suffering was an injury to the soul, right? That there's only so much suffering the soul can take, and it dies, right? So I was tuning in with that, and I thought, well, am I here to protect my body, or am I really protecting my soul? And it was like, no, it's about my soul. This is the much more enduring factor of my life here. And so it was at that time that Carolyn Myss had published The Sacred Contracts. And I went deep into that book. It was all about the archetypes. It became the centerpiece of my whole life. Like I just pulled it off the shelf. I knew I needed to read it. Didn't even know what it was about.
Wow.
Work through it, and very quickly learned the difference. This was a really key insight at that point. I learned the difference between what it feels like to gain energy and what it feels like to lose energy. It's a very fine, subtle point that
Mm.
if you can learn that difference, then it will guide you in all of your life. And another way to name that is, are you living from a place of fear, or are you living from a place of love?
Yeah.
Right? So fear consumes energy and costs us our life, and love gives energy and gives life. So there was just this certain, immediate tweak that took place, and I actually went from being a dying person to a living person as I tweaked and I awakened that. And then I went to work on my archetypes, and I discovered, what my life purpose is according to the archetypes, and then never had to look back. I recovered fully after that, and within 6 months' time, I was actually in front of an audience playing my guitar at the this oncology conference for
Wow.
nurses. They invited me out. They thought it was such a miracle that I had survived, even though my doctor told me I wasn't going to live. And so I just kind of like clued in, like, okay, there's something here. I knew for sure I was not going to go back into the corporate world. It gave me that ticket out. Unfortunately, that's, so I was able to tell my family, like, no, it's done. They were very disappointed, of course, and tried to encourage me to come back. But it was at that point when I realized, like, no, I've got to pursue these other interests and passions. I'd been to India 8 times previously. I was studying meditation and yoga and all the esoteric arts. So I just began to teach that. It was the only thing I really knew how to do at that point. And so I built a life around teaching yoga and classes and doing workshops. And I started to teach the archetypes because I'd seen how incredibly powerful they were for my life and wanted to give that to others. So I did that for a decade. And then when I got pregnant with my son, I decided that it was time to get responsible to the next level. I still had a pretty strong, rebel hippie chick going on in me. And, that's great when you're just one person. But now that I had a being to take care of, I thought I was going to be a single mom in the whole process, which I'm, my son's dad has been extremely involved, but nonetheless, I had that idea. So it was time to grow up, and I re-embraced my business experience at that point. Everything, I'd been a vice president. I had lots of knowledge and wisdom. I'd been mentored very closely with my father. And so I re-embraced that with all of the spiritual stuff and began to coach women in how to build businesses.
I love that too, because it ties back to that feminist sort of urge that you had, but in a very productive way instead of this destructive way, right?
Exactly, exactly. So it became about empowering women to embrace money, because it's much harder for them to think of money. I think, women haven't even been able to own property or have their own bank accounts. It's, a very short time in history since that's been the case. And there's a lot more trepidation. Women struggle in very different ways than men do with business builds. And so there's really specific ways that I can help them. They're multi-passionates for the most part. They love a lot of things. They're going in different directions. And so pulling that all together, doing the alchemy of becoming whole and finding the value of the life purpose is the main theme of it. Alongside of the nuts and bolts of teaching the business, it's also that very much that spiritual development path.
Yeah, I love that you merged those two things together, because I think kind of the whole theme here is that spiritual development is the whole point, right? Like
Exactly.
that's what we're doing, right? But we also have to be practical beings in this world. It's not like we can abandon our physical needs either. So I think
Hmm.
that's really cool that you bring that together. And I love that you have this realization of, the love versus fear and acting out of love instead of fear. And that's the moment of kind of deepest transformation that you had. Um, because I feel like one of the things that people are really disconnected from is their own bodies. And I feel like you can feel that difference, like you're saying. And I don't know if that's how you were saying it. It was like as a physical feeling, but I feel like it's something that if people could learn, that's a very practical way and like a moment to moment, day by day skill that you can have to recognize where you're at and whether or not what you're doing is serving you or not, or whether or not you should move
Hmm.
forward with something or not, is like to just feel it in your body. Is
Hmm.
this Is this a positive feeling or a negative feeling? Because I think I just don't think we recognize how disconnected from our own bodies we tend to be. We like hold
Hmm.
ourselves all tensed up even. And like, it's just weird that
Hmm.
you can be in yourself, but not at all aware of being in yourself.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I actually describe it like we avoid our human experience like the plague. We're doing
Yeah.
everything we can to get out of it, to distract, to look at anything. The technology really feeds us in that way, always giving us something that's moving and tweaking, and endless material for those that want to escape out of their human
Yes.
experience, and then going into it and really sorting through it and deciphering it, because it's, when you talk about bad feelings or good feelings, unfortunately they're not a good marker for telling us, because we could
Yeah.
have we could actually have the fear of death around following our calling. To me, that's
True.
that's why that's why we're not all doing it. So if we
Right.
let that rule us, it's more about getting to the root of it and seeing, okay, is that fear of death, is that true, or is that a big fat lie that this is going to kill me? So getting down to the bottom of it and actually letting go of the human experience, but yet you can't let go of it without first embodying it.
Yeah.
Right? It's a real catch. It's like God built this incredible door for us, these bodies, all these sensations, the thoughts, the feelings, and then if we don't go through that door, then we don't fully live, and we don't make it to freedom. We don't make it to clarity. We don't see situations for what they actually are, because we're so clouded with either avoiding our experience or being lost in it.
Mm. It's so interesting that it's such like a double-edged sword. Like it can be the ultimate trap, but it can also be the thing that frees you the most.
Exactly. Exactly.
So weird.
Yeah. Yeah. It is
Um,
weird.
all right, so where are we at now? So you have been doing this. Do you want to tell people about the archetypes and what you do, or?
Sure. Yeah. For those of your listeners that aren't familiar with archetype work, you're noticing that I have to go let my cat in.
Oh yeah.
But archetypes, I consider them to be a kind of spiritual and emotional DNA, like a blueprint. And even another word I use a lot these days is like a map, because, like we were saying, that the human experience, it's so intense, it's so complex, it's so deep, layer upon layer upon layer. And perhaps that's accumulations from lifetimes that we've got. So the archetypes are a way to help us sort it out and simplify the process, and in some cases oversimplifying. So if you go to my website and you do my archetype quiz, you're going to get one answer. You're going to get, here's where you're at right now. It doesn't begin to describe the complexity of you, but it gives you an entry point to begin working. And so that's what I did, right? Like when I discovered the archetype that was out of alignment for me, that rebel, it was just one of my archetypes. It was not the whole of me by any means. And yet by awakening it, I reclaimed enough energy to save my life.
It's pretty
You know,
amazing.
yeah. So that's the beauty of it, that you can have such big breakthroughs. I watched a client go through it yesterday, and in 24 hours, he had enormous breakthroughs. Again, just with
Wow.
looking at one archetype,
Yeah.
and all
That's
of a sudden,
sorry,
yeah,
go
all of
ahead.
a sudden, he can take action that he was wanting to take for years, and having an awakening that would come fitfully, and then he'd go to sleep, and it come to again. But all of a sudden, the light was really shining in that one area of his life, the shadow, and that's that ultimate fear of dying that we're all so plagued with. So I'm very, whoa, sorry,
You're fine.
very, yeah, very committed to helping people get past that, even though it's something that we don't want to look at. But that's when you face your own death. That's, you know about that. You're not you're not afraid of it anymore, and that's what we need to do. So that the archetypes are such a gift, that if you can look through that window and see part of yourself that's not awake, and you're just like, oh well, that doesn't make any sense now. As soon as you see that that's happening, you just begin to act in a different way, right? So if you
Right.
don't have any other tools, the archetypes themselves are that tool to, well, I can just start being the rebel with a cause. I can stop wasting my energy fighting things that are, I can't make any change in, or that are really not my path at all. to make a difference. I don't have to fight, for example, the medical system. I was in a war with the medical system because it represented that authority over me. And,
And they were
so,
poisoning you.
oh, they were killing me at every turn. Like,
Mm.
and especially because I believed that,
Oh,
especially,
yeah.
right. Especially because, so I made them the enemy. I made them something that was trying to harm me. I was double thinking, double, I was questioning them at every turn, and they would fight me and they would beat me down and they would scare the hell out of me. You're going to die like
Yeah.
this, right? And the moment I had a breakthrough about that, it was during uh, treatments, but towards the very end of it. And all of a sudden, I did this turn where I went from being that person who was really afraid to die, afraid to be sick, which I already was, and much more acting out of love for myself. And I was able to decide, like, no, I'm not going to do this stem cell transplant. So I came to them with that message, and I was expecting this big backlash, and they're like, okay,
Yeah. That's
right?
so weird. Yeah.
It was a total turnaround. Somehow, like, they could never have explained what was different.
Right. Well,
And
and
yet,
you can't really, I mean, you can explain because you understand the internal part of it, but if you were gonna, like, you can't quantify it, you're like, hold your hand like this and have your face set like this and say it in this tone, there's not like a recipe that made them realize that it's all internal. It's so weird.
that's right. That's right. And that's become a modus operandi for me, that when
Mhm.
I've got problems on the outside, I know that I have to do that inner work. And
Mm.
there's no point in trying to deal with the problem outside before I do that, because it just perpetuates it. I had it happen twice in the last 3 days, where somebody that I was demonizing, they had triggered me. They brought up the worst in me. I went into this black hole and discovered all this crazy stuff. And it's really, again, all comes down to that basic fear of dying, or even wanting to die, which is a form of being afraid to die. And so I handled it in myself. My energy shot way up. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, there I am. I got on a call with that person the next day, and it was like nothing had ever happened.
Wow.
Absolutely nothing. Right. And the other, if I hadn't done that work, I would have completely sabotaged that relationship. I would have thrown the baby in the bathwater out. But now it's like, no, I've got these amazing choices open to me. So that's how powerful it can be.
That is truly powerful. I mean, because I have the same thing where I'm looking out at people every once in a while and I'm like, well, you're doing this and you're like this. But I had a similar experience this year where someone came to me with issues. And I had been kind of demonizing them in my mind too. But in the moment that they came to me, I remembered, like, there's nothing that's going to be gained by me trying to, like, blame them or make them, agree that they've done something wrong or anything. Like, all I can do is
Exactly.
try to just be honest and loving towards them as I can, and understand that they're acting out of a place that has really truly nothing to do with me. And then because of that, like, the whole interaction went really well and the problem just, like, completely diffused, and then it was over.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
um,
Right. Right. So good. So
I
good.
think your examples are much more powerful because you're actually doing some sort of internal work, whereas mine was just like a kind of momentary thing. Like, I'd like to do enough inner work so that just doesn't happen anymore. That's possible, right?
Yeah, and sometimes we can do that inner work very quickly too. That you have high energy, I can tell. And when we make a decision, that's really the basis for any kind of shift that's going to happen. Is a clear, conscious decision to have things turn out in a different way.
Mm.
So sometimes that's all you need, and sometimes you need a few days and a coach and a you know that archetype map, and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
Well, it's amazing to me too when I think about, like, the archetypes that you're talking about, and you work with the hero's journey as well too. The archetypes on the hero's journey, like, mixed together, or are they always
Yes,
mixed together, and that's just new to me?
the there are specific archetypes that are played out through the entirety of the hero's journey. There are different takes on it. I have my own take on it.
Okay.
The way that I've studied archetypes has all been internal.
Hmm.
I look and I see and I feel into it, and, like, what is this? What are the qualities here? The whole mermaid thing came up for me after my dad passed away in 2015. And I did that whole journey inside. I never looked out. I never went and thought, oh, I'm thinking of mermaids. I'm going to go read up on all of this. I did on the other side of all of that internal work, just to compare notes. Now, like, am I a total lunatic?
Yeah. Like, did this come from nowhere?
Yeah, exactly. And then it was when my mom passed away in New Year's Eve 2017 that I hit another, kind of knock 'em down experience. It flattened me. It was a total takedown. And the archetypes, then at that point, I was reading Carol Pearson's book. I'm sorry, I don't remember the title quite offhand, but it was about that hero's journey and the archetypes in it. And then I'm thinking to myself, going, I wonder if the archetypes that I found in this Mer energy are a journey. And in less than 5 minutes, I sat down and bring the whole thing was there. It was already there because it's archetypal.
Right.
Of course it's there. And it's not identical to her system or other people's system. And the way that I describe archetypes is not identical. There's going to be similarity and overlap. But I was joking with somebody today that when somebody describes archetypes, I can read their archetypes by how they're describing the archetypes.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
We're always coming through our filters, whether we know that or not.
Right.
And so, yes, the journey is fixed somewhere, but we all have some creative play in it. It's our interaction, it's our ability, so it let me off the hook when I saw everybody was saying something not totally different, not opposing, but their own nuances in it. And I thought, yeah, I can take creative license here and do my thing, what's true inside of me.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's as we were saying earlier, like, that's going to be what's truly helpful for you, but also for other people, right? Because it's like endless different iterations of anything is good, because somebody somewhere needs that exact iteration of it for it to work for them, right?
You got it. Right back to that thing that our purpose is not just about us, it's about how we fit with humanity. So to me, this Mer energy, it was really specific to those who want to use their life purpose and evolve their life's work as a way to serve, because we look in the world and we see all this garbage day after day after day. We're being pummeled by it, and then you have one choice, is to just sit back and turn into a victim and distract down. But if you want to stay awake and you want to keep feeling what's happening, then you're going to have this, like, I must do something, I must be part of a change. And that's, especially the people that I am here to serve and who can relate. So it's a very beautiful thing that when I discover these things inside myself and then I come out with it, I must have done 40 interviews with people in my community just to say, like, hey, does this sound like anything to you? Because I always think I'm a nutball by that point.
Yeah.
and they're all like going, oh my God, it's mythic. Oh, it's like, wow, how do you know exactly what I've been through? And all of this kind of stuff. Looks like a magic trick, but it's like, no, well, this is a type, it's a thing. And so it gives us that common ground in that language, and to be able to follow a journey. It's so comforting, right? Not have to face the wall. When people say that, oh, anything is possible, you can do anything, it's the biggest lie.
Yeah. I love that.
It's like, yeah. And it's really overwhelming, because then you're like, oh no, I can do anything. Darn it. I've got a million choices and I'm afraid to make the wrong choice. But if you start with your blueprint and you see, okay, here's what I'm wired for. Now within that wiring, what can I do?
Yeah.
And within that is actually infinite possibility, but it's still in that kind of narrow framework.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's like you're capable of anything. You're capable of achieving anything within your realm of kind of where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Based on what you chose coming to this earth and your agreement.
Your needs and your abilities, basically what you can offer as well. So what else I was kind of headed towards was that, there's these Jungian sort of aspects of things, and the way that they're helping you and others develop is, it just reminds me of psychotherapy, which is very expensive. But these types of things are more accessible to people. And I feel like I always wish that 100% of people would do psychotherapy, because I think that, like I said earlier, I think we're so disconnected from ourselves and from each other and from nature, and that this is kind of the best way to get back in touch with the real truth of how connected we really are and how connected we need to be, and kind of patch up sort of the traumas that have gone on in our lives. But people don't have access to that, like it's very inaccessible for most people, whereas ideas like this and processes like this are much more accessible, and probably honestly more appropriate for people who aren't severely traumatized, at least. And so I love that you've kind of taken this inaccessible thing and you're making it more accessible to people, because I think that that's a beautiful process, that more people deserve to have access to.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, that's one of the things I actually really love about my business is that, and the businesses that I teach others to create, that it has multi-levels, everything from, and it's how you and I met, right? You heard my
Right.
talk on Freeman, and
Yeah.
then you took me up on a quiz, and you took me up on a session,
And
and
that
here we
quiz
are on
was
an
right.
interview.
People should go do that because it was exactly my archetype, I think.
Right on. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's great. And then, so, but building multi levels so that somebody who wants to go very deep and get big results and overcome a big thing. I had somebody come to me and they had been given a diagnosis of cancer and a very short time to live. And then they're on my doorstep, and, so they needed to go deep and they needed to have very intense work. And it was a big investment, but it was, at that point, what do you have to lose?
Right.
Right. So, and I've seen people that didn't have resources technically. For example, a woman that was running across the country from an abusive husband with 2 kids. She had nothing, but she invested heavily in herself. She still came up with what she needed to get through that next door. Again, it's that cyclone. All of a sudden, it's a do or die moment.
Right.
And you do. You do or you die,
Yeah.
and that was her choice to do.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of different levels and layers for people to engage with my work in.
It's also interesting, and I don't know if you feel comfortable speaking to this or not, but I've heard it said that, to get like initiated into the mysteries, whatever that means to people,
Mm,
somebody would have to do Jungian psychotherapy first. And
mm.
I heard that, and I wish I have the worst memory ever. Maybe someone listening to this can remind me who said that or why they said that. But I wonder, like, if you have any thoughts on that
Yeah, I'm
concept.
pretty spooked these days about that word initiation. I
Yeah.
I did study about it. I have a degree in anthropology, and that initiation, it's the same thing we're talking about, where there's that breakdown, and you come apart and then you get put together in
Mm.
a new way. But it's been kind of hijacked by the more evil forces, where it's levels of initiation that is really about selling your soul
Mm.
because you feel lack. And this is very prevalent in the celebrity world,
It's like the
where
MK Ultra concept is
Mhm.
that you get broken down and then you're not you anymore.
That's right. That's right. And their initiations are all about deeper and deeper levels of things that you would never do if you didn't want that fame and that notoriety and that money on the other side. You
Yeah.
would never do that. You would never sell out to the devil and go through these heightened levels of initiation that are there to, like you said, completely break you down, break you apart, kill your morals, kill the
Yeah.
soul, make you a machine for that you're entirely manipulating, manipulable.
Yeah.
And most of those people in those roles right now, we think they've got it so great and that they're so free and wealthy and everything, and they're in prison. They're absolutely in prison because they've been through these initiations. They've got so much dirt on them; they could ruin them at any turn, and they're completely locked in to be puppets for that, evil forces or agendas.
Right. Like whether it's um kind of physically, like you do this on this day, you say it in this way or whatever, or whether it's like spiritually, where something's actually like literally controlling them,
Yeah, and I
perhaps.
think I think it ends up being a package deal.
A bit of both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What is your take on that agenda and that evil and kind of what it is, or what it's doing in the world?
Yeah, I've thought about it so much. You heard me talk about it on the interview with Freeman, but I'll say it again, that I had
Yeah.
a woman come into my world as a client who had horrendous experiences, unspeakable experiences in the field of ritual abuse.
Mhm.
and being trafficked and, being part of a network, worldwide network. It opened my eyes to something I really wasn't willing to believe existed. I didn't think evil existed. I just thought in terms of unconscious archetypes that act out and create what we don't want. But then I saw a whole different level. And to me, I had to figure it out. What is this?
Yeah, that's
I
that's where
needed
I'm
to know.
at.
I needed to know, like, what is the purpose of that? Why would this be manifested? Why would God create this? And so it really led me back to some Christian roots that I had. And so I saw that whole mythology of Lucifer, whether it's just mythology or there's anything literal about it, I don't have a clue. I really don't. But, Lucifer was the highest angel. He had God's favor, right? He was the favorite. And then it wasn't enough for him. He wanted the whole world. He wanted power, and God said, okay, free will, you got it. You have domain over the earth. And then it became this, what I feel to be a consumption, right? Like when you want and you need, you're busy consuming and consuming and consuming. You're eating, you're trying to fill yourself up, you're trying to fill that void, that hunger. And to me, it's like when you get to that ultimate level, because we're all faced with that hunger, right? We have to literally control ourselves when it comes to, eating the whole bag of chips. You have to stop yourself at some point and go, okay, this isn't fun anymore. This is right. It's just a very benign example. Or, binging on Netflix. Why did you need to watch 27 episodes in a row and all that kind of thing, right? So we're always faced with that at some point. If it goes to its own, to me, that spiral will go all the way to the death of the soul. Nickel and dimes you out of every little spark of life in that soul. So if we don't put the governor on, if we don't stop and we say, okay, like this is it, this is as bad as it gets, I'm going to start uh, building energy and being conscious and making conscious choices and working against those demons that we're all fight with. So to me, that ultimate evil is when the vortex is complete. You've gone 100% into the hunger. You become an embodiment of hunger. And the only thing that your only purpose at that point with no soul is to self-exist. That's your only purpose. It's like AI.
Yeah.
You become artificial intelligence, and all it knows is how to keep on being in that eternal hell state. Right? That's hell to me.
Yeah. I
And
like
hunger
that.
is. Mm,
I mean, I don't like it. I like the
yeah.
description. I like that understanding.
Yeah, I get it.
So do
Totally
you
get it.
think that there's a way for that to end?
I think the way for that to end is for us to take on evolving our own soul in a really serious, full-time kind of a way. Again, why I'm a proponent of people doing their life's work for a living, because there's nothing faster, there's nothing more motivating than doing that. You have everything to lose. When you have everything to lose, then you give it your all. You do whatever it takes to get through that door. And, on the one hand, it's like they're building their business and creating livelihoods, but really the true work is about evolving the soul. And so, before I knew about all this pure evil in the world, that was the job that I knew we had to do. That was one of my realizations through recovering from cancer. And then after knowing all about this stuff and being, down and lost in the rabbit hole and coming out the other side, it's still the work that we need to do, right? That
Right.
evolving the soul, because it's the creative process. It's the opposite of consumption, the opposite of hunger. When we're creative and we're digging in and we're connecting with our own soul and we're manifesting through it, because that's how you evolve the soul, is actually creating stuff and doing stuff. And then you're not food for that hunger. You're just not available from that place.
I love it. Well, you're going to starve it to death by being badasses.
That's it. Exactly. You got it. You got it.
That is really, really cool. So I'm guessing the answer is no, but could there be anything that you think that transforms you into a person that did not pursue what you're pursuing right now? The development of yourself and others?
Yeah, I thought about that question, and no, no, I just don't think so. I don't think so. Can't imagine anything that would turn me away. I've been through hell already. that
Right.
didn't turn me away. Continue to go face losses and go through stuff. And it just takes me deeper because at some point, that hunger has a lot of gravity, but when you turn it around and you want freedom more than you want anything that you're hungry for, and then freedom has gravity, it starts to pull you. There's this kind of thing that happens, and momentum and choices as if get made for you. You don't even get into, even if you want to go back into the darkness, it doesn't want you,
Yeah. I like
right?
that. You want to be the type of person that the darkness doesn't want anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. All the right things reject you in that
Yes.
case.
So what do you think it is that others could find to motivate them to start to do this work without maybe such a cyclone ripping them apart? Or do you think it's
Yeah,
possible?
yeah. Still debating, but that's the hope. Always the hope is there. And then frankly, why not prepare for the cyclone?
Mm.
If it's inevitable, if we're all going to go through it, why don't you start weight training now? It's kind of some of the warrior energy that's on the Merpreneur's journey is that, you don't have a battle or a war right in front of you. That's the hope, that you never have that battle or the war, but you want to be strong and powerful and confident and feel like, okay, yeah, bring it on. If there's something that I need to go through, and then maybe it doesn't happen for you personally, maybe it happens to somebody that's really close to you, and you want to be ready for that. You want to
Mm.
be ready to support them and be a champion for them. And when I was sick with cancer, honestly, most of my friends disappeared.
Wow.
The vast majority of them. You hear this from many people that go through big breakdowns or loss of some kind like that, because they can't take it. They
Mm.
can't. They can't face that they might go through similar losses or have to face their own mortality, which they will. They know that somewhere deep down inside. So instead, they reject the person, right? But if you're in training and you take your training really seriously and make yourself strong and powerful, then you're going to be able to stand up in the face of your own calamity or somebody else's as well.
I love that. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I also, maybe you find this, I definitely find this, like once you prepare for something that you're expecting to possibly be hard or difficult or cause you troubles, it doesn't happen then. It's
it
like
doesn't
because
have
you
to happen.
prepared, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't have to happen. Exactly. My birth of my son was a great example with that, that I trained like crazy to, at first I was training to stay out of the medical system. I didn't want a medical birth. I didn't want to be, surgically opened up. I didn't want to be interfered with. I had a very deep trust in life at that point, a trust in myself, a trust in my unborn child. And but at the same time, I faced all my fears of that medical world, and I packed my bag for the hospital, and I hired midwives to meet me at the hospital. And I literally prepared. I had several dreams that helped me sort out all my fears about the hospital world that might have been part of this birth. And
Wow.
then lo and behold, didn't need it. My midwives actually fired me from a home birth, so they had no jurisdiction whatsoever over my birth. And it was like clockwork. The whole thing just went ahead in a beautiful way. Not to say I didn't scream the whole time, I did.
Yeah.
But it was exactly that. Preparing for the eventuality that I didn't want, it meant that I didn't have to go through that.
That's pretty
So,
amazing. So, and that was your first child?
yeah, first and only.
Wow. You're
Hmm.
so brave. That's amazing.
Thank you very much. I'd watched several women go through three babies, the hospital birth, and they hated it. And then the home birth with a midwife or a medwife, and they hated it. And then they turned around and free birthed on a third child. And I thought, I wasn't even supposed to be able to get pregnant after all the chemo that I did.
Wow.
And I thought that, okay, this is my only chance. I want this to go. I know how it can go. I know how it can go. And I had support. I had several people in my life that had done it, and I had great doulas. I had like 5 doulas, so I felt supported enough to be able to birth at home in water, and everything went amazing. So
That's beautiful. I love it. I hope
thank
more
you.
people follow that same path when possible. Um, so
It's hard
what,
to recommend.
yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, well, they're most of society is working against them, honestly.
that's it. Yeah, I spent the whole time doing this, like, don't tell me your
Stop talking to
horror
me.
stories. Exactly.
Wow. So what do you think, if there's any downfall, what would the downfall be for people who are traveling a similar path as you, as you know, finding their true selves and living their truth? Do you think there's
Oh yeah.
drawbacks or downfalls?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's the hardest thing, right? Like when it comes to say your business and your life's work being the same thing, way easier to go sell widgets.
Yeah.
That's way easier, right? Through doing your life's work and taking your life purpose and turning it into something of value to others, then it's the biggest challenges ever. It's you will go through a lot of pain. We're all trying to avoid pain, and we got the painkillers, and we got the pain down. You can get rid of your pain, but only to a point. We all know that painkillers stop working at some point, and the pain's still there. And we've demonized the pain, but really the pain is the door. We just need to go through that door and let whatever that pain needs to teach us how to pivot, how to change and adjust. We need to learn from it. So yeah, there's suffering, but the fact is that on the other side, it's also suffering. It's just unnecessary suffering. It's purposeless suffering. On the side of your own sacred contract, it's all purposeful suffering. It
I
gets
really
it
like
gets
that.
you on it gets you on track. It gives you energy. There's even in the suffering, there's a certain joy of it. Like oh my God, I'm doing this, and yeah, I'm on the floor crying, but thank God I'm in this situation
Right.
at all, right?
I can relate. So I just wonder too if you think there's a certain aspect of this where you maybe alienate isn't the right word, but you alienate or sort of disconnect from a lot of people on your path. And I know you mentioned that people abandoned you when you were on your deathbed, basically. But even
Mhm.
aside from that, like, do you find that it's harder and harder to connect with certain people, that they kind of fall away the further you go down this path, or?
Yeah, it's one of those big risks that, again, no one wants to take. That when you raise your energy, then it makes all the people in your life decide, are they going to rise with you or are they going to fall themselves away? And that can be that can be your partner, that can be your child. This happened to me with my kid when I did all that inner work. And next thing you know, he announces he's moving out, he's going to live with his dad. Right. So I raised my energy and I risked losing my kid. And ultimately, it all came completely back into a very beautiful, incredibly satisfying, loving place. But I
That's
had to
great.
take that risk that, because we keep ourselves small, we keep ourselves low energy so that people will feel comfortable with us.
Right.
And we don't trust that the right people are going to show up on the other side. Every single time I take a leap in my life, and I do it a lot.
Yeah,
I'm a grower, and I want to get there. I want to get to freedom faster.
I'm with you.
And so it's right on. It's a house clearing every time, and sent out one of my first videos and speaking a lot more truth in line with the Freeman world. And big chunk of unsubscribes just bleeding off my
Yeah.
list, right? Like it just okay, right on, good, thanks, bye.
Yeah.
And they might come back and they might not come back, and it's okay. That's the path that people who want to ride with me, great. And if you don't, that's also great. That
Right.
saves me the trouble. So
Because and maybe you mentioned this, or maybe you found too that when like those people kind of fall away or they burn away in the fire of your of your growth, but you also then find new people or more people kind of waiting right there on the other side where you didn't know that they would be, and it's like maybe it's not
mhm.
tit for tat or whatnot, but it's like you're never going to be alone, I think.
Yeah, there is a time. I think we're very much tested. Carolyn Myss writes about it like a kind of desert phase in the fifth house of the astrology is my memory,
Right.
and it's there are times we have to be willing to walk alone, right?
Right.
We came to this earth alone. We're going to die alone. Doesn't matter who's around you. You're going to have to make that journey. I watched my mom with it. It was like it's a crazy journey to leave Earth, and so there can definitely be that time where you don't have your old friends, there's no new friends around, and you just have to sit in the fire of being in that desert and let it alchemize you, let it cook you, let it change you, let it bring you into yourself. And for me, it was such a cure for that hunger of people's love and approval, that I should do the thing that they want me to do. And, and there I wasn't getting their approval anymore, and I didn't have new friends. And so it's intense, but I got to the other side, and you're absolutely right that and it's been very quick also, right? I remember one time, it's not very often, but I had to fire a client that was absolutely like a wrong fit for the work. And the next day, the perfect client walked through the door, and I knew for a fact if I didn't have the guts to do that the day before, the next one wouldn't have had space to come, right? So we don't know how long the desert's going to exactly play out for us every time, but I have a lot of faith now that, yeah, it's always on the other side. Your people are waiting. Your people are begging you. They're begging you. That's the thing. We think, oh, it's maybe about our own fulfillment, but it's our people need what we have. They need us to get out there and do that. No pressure.
And honestly, I think the people who fall away are also begging you, right? Because whatever you're doing with each other is not actually what either of you need. So as soon as one of you can choose to go away, then like you're both free to then move on to the next thing, right?
You got it. Very wise. Yeah. Great perception.
Thank you. So let's talk. We kind of talked about some major trends in society that lead to suffering, like electronics being very distracting and easily like addictive. But is there anything else you'd like look at and say that's a pretty negative trend we're on?
I see it as it's all tools and even if it was created for a world agenda and killing off humans and all that kind of thing, that tools are tools. They have no inherent negativity about them. They're just benign, right? They need human consciousness to come along and decide, is it going to be used in a benevolent way or in a destructive way?
That makes
sense. So I believe that everything, so maybe they created the internet to rule over us and control our minds, but here we are using it for some kind of enlightenment, right? Yes. We're having a conversation. And so we can turn, and I feel the same way about money. I feel like it was created to dominate and to put us down. It's very artificial. If we woke up tomorrow and all agreed that money didn't exist, it just wouldn't exist, right? And yet we can use it by being valued for a purpose to get out there and make changes and be a force for others and help others. So, everything can be taken into a good context with good intentions.
I like that. Yeah, because a lot of people have been really critical of Facebook, and the CIA created it, and so it's obviously bad, evil, and it is that. It was created by the CIA for that purpose, but like we're on there. I don't know if you're on there actually, but I'm on there. Yeah. And I'm connecting with people I've found, and I've met some of the best people that I've met in my life through Facebook, and I'm very grateful for that. And if I didn't have it, it wouldn't have happened perhaps. So
exactly.
I'm with you with that. Like, I think anything can be good or bad depending on what you do with it. So, and if you just walk away from something like Facebook and that's where everyone's at, like, you're not going to affect, that's that whole realm of people you're not going to affect or interact with. I mean, I don't think you have to be on Facebook. And I do think obviously it can be bad, but I think you can use it for good too.
Yeah, it's how awake are you when you go to it? Do you have a purpose? Or are you there to create something, to create connection? Or are you there to escape from how you're feeling?
Yeah.
So
are you just scrolling totally through, or are you intentional? So what do you think? Do you think there's something inside of us that can be protective, or that we can create our own protection sort of for ourselves against whatever evil, darkness?
Yeah. Oh, I just came across a really interesting response to that somebody said, and I'm not sure I agree with it, but they said that, oh yeah, if you're doing protection medicine, then you're basically calling in the negative forces.
The energy that would attack your barrier, basically.
Yeah, and I'm not decided exactly about that, but a certain thing does resonate with me. And there's I'm a firm believer in that we have to say protect ourselves. Like I don't have a gun yet, but I'm going gun shopping.
Yeah. And I just got my first gun.
Awesome. Yeah. That's great. Good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, in Canada, it's a little more out there to even think of. So it was a big thing.
I'm
Hmm.
going to travel through Canada on my journey that's coming up, and I can't bring my pistol to Canada.
For sure. Exactly.
I didn't
Exactly. You
realize
got
that.
it. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
We're
you can get rifles, but you can't have pistols. Is that right?
it's different levels of licensing and
Okay.
so they're there. You can still buy them, but there's like I wouldn't have access to them, and you've got to go through courses, and everything's got to be registered. You can't just go and independently, privately buy a gun and have it. The cops know you have it, and
Okay.
that kind of thing. So yeah, yeah, it's a different thing. Um, so there's I think there's a possibility that when we're say on the spiritual level, on the mystical level, when you're dealing with demons and that kind of thing, what I've noticed, because I've had a lot of visitations from demons in the last couple of years,
Mm.
that I think they get more and more attracted. From what I heard, also, I've been kind of looking into it. They get more and more attracted the more you become a threat, right? Like when you
Yeah.
know the truth and
Right.
you have high energy,
And you're
they don't care about
acting
you.
in a way that will prevent them from getting other people as well.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly. So you're some kind of threat. So I've been under a fair amount of attacks. And for me, the most effective way to deal with those attacks, and it worked 100% of the time in like sometimes seconds or minutes. And it's literally to just have no resistance whatsoever, no
Mm.
fear, no resistance.
Mm.
And so, you can think about it like, oh, if you're going to fight with that demon, you're going to struggle with that demon, you're going to, like this. But I think that gives them food.
Yeah.
I think they feed on that. That gives them somewhere to enter into you. You enter into that battle and that struggle. It becomes part of you inside. But if I just melt to it, like woof,
Right.
like
Hmm.
this, they got nothing to hold on to. There's like it's not even there. It doesn't
Wow.
even exist, right? So I don't know how that relates to the outer. Like if somebody comes and tries to break down my door and steal my kid, I'm going to fight them. I don't
Oh
care.
yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Right? I'll kill them if I have to kill them. And,
Right.
but so, yeah, I'm not really 100% decided, but when it comes to that protection magic, you hear a lot of that these days, and protection altars and all that kind of stuff. I think it's unfortunately calling in the wrong thing
Mhm.
sometimes. I think that actually hooks you up with those demonic forces somewhere. I can't prove or back it up, but that's just my
Right.
feeling.
Yeah. Well, I have my experiences are exactly similar to what you were saying, where that sort of release and like dissolution or whatever you want to call that is actually a very effective method. But I do think it has a physical corollary because if someone, especially as women, if a larger man comes and grabs you and is dragging you away, for example, which happened to me one time, unfortunately,
Oh,
I fought as hard as I could, like full adrenaline. Like I knew that if I
yeah,
did not get away, I was going to die probably.
yeah.
And could not budge. Like just he's stronger than me. He's dragging me away. But then
Mm.
I actually remembered an Oprah show that taught me that your dead weight is almost impossible to carry. And so
Ah,
I just completely went limp and he dropped me and I got up and ran away. And that's how I
amazing.
got away, right? So that
Ah,
it's
what
a
a good.
similar,
Oh, exactly, exactly. Wow, that's profound.
yeah, it was pretty intense.
I'm so glad you got away.
I like to tell that story just in case that ever happens to anyone else, because literally if I hadn't have heard that on Oprah, like I would not have gotten away, as far as I know.
Then God bless Oprah.
Yes, I know. It's funny too, because Oprah actually saved a friend of mine's life too, because she talked about how if you're ever underwater in a car, you let the water fill up the car before you can open the door, because the pressure won't let you open the
Mm,
door, and you struggle. A lot of people struggle and struggle, and they waste their air and their energy, and by the time the water fills up, they've kind of given up. But you actually like have to let the water fill up. Maybe that's also kind of a similar corollary. You kind of like release and wait, right? And then once it fills up, you can open it. And she was able to get out of her underwater car and swim to the
amazing,
surface.
amazing. Nice. So I think it's decided then.
Yeah, I hope that no one ever has to go through any of those things, but just in case.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Again, it's the preparedness. If you're prepared for that and you thought through, okay, what am I going to do? Then you're not attracting that because whatever we're trying to prevent, we're calling it in. That's just a
Yeah.
fact of life.
And if you're confident that it's not going to happen because you've prepared enough, then maybe that's part of how it doesn't happen, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you're like
Mm-hmm.
sure of that. All right, so
Mm-hmm.
are there any practices you would recommend for people who want to look deeper into reality or themselves?
Yeah, it's just what we said. It is some kind of practice of releasing. There's many ways to do it. I work with an incredibly fast way. It's the fastest way that I've ever had. Like to work with archetypes themselves, it is a release process. By seeing a shadow, you stop suppressing the shadow, you reclaim that energy, you release that energy.
Mm.
I worked with a Tibetan technique called Tonglen, extremely effective. Also, a beautiful way of, because we're all in with the good and out with the bad, and it's that's really the ego's way. That's an ego trap. We're
Mm.
trying to take in good and let go of the bad, and it's this technique is the opposite. It's actually take in the bad and then offer the antidote.
Mm.
So you get to digest, you get to go
Wow.
through, right? You get to it becomes food. It feels like you're eating when you eat that pain. And then you get to see what you're made of, because if the antidote to the pain is love, then it's like, oh my God, I got love. I didn't see that, but I've
Yeah.
got it to give, right? And then you turn around and you do it on behalf of everybody who suffers like you do. You breathe in all of their pain. Like I thought I could never do that for how much I was suffering on the physical level. And then you breathe out the antidote on behalf of them. And again, you see how powerful you are, that you could do that for everybody in the world that's suffering like that. So that's a beautiful release technique. And then now it's the work of Lester Levinson that I have adopted and I use, again because the speed of it. It's such a fast way through doors. There's no wiggle room for anybody who's really, really committed to their freedom. It's just the shortest path to see what you're doing, what you're going through, and how to get to the other side. So that's what I would recommend. It's like meditation squared. Your energy goes up very, very quickly because you're dealing with programs that are underneath the feelings. For the most part, we're only seeing the feelings. We're not seeing the programs because they're too painful to see.
Mm.
But if you can learn to be aware of them and let go of those, then you also let go of all the feelings that sit on top of the programs. I know this is pretty way out there as a
I love
description,
it.
but and you literally get high doing it. You can all of a sudden the lights go on. I had a client say today, "Is like, oh my God, it's brighter in here,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well,
So
I don't know if you've had any experiences like this, but I sometimes am starting a practice or doing a practice, and a couple days later, I look in the mirror and I'm like, whoa, my eyes are like shining.
mhm.
Like color seems different, and they're just like very bright. And then I wonder if anyone else ever notices that, or if it's just all in my head. But I
I'm
do.
sure
I
they
think you can
notice.
tell.
Absolutely.
All right. So I think it's very clear. But who would you say you are today because of what you've learned along the way?
I'm a champion for the soul.
Yay.
Yeah, that's what I feel like I'm here to help people do, is to protect the life of their soul, to grow their soul.
I love it. And what are
Yeah.
you grateful for along with your travels?
Oh, practically everything. It uh, it goes it goes in waves. I just got myself out of a wave, and had a great speaker on a was it Freeman? I think yeah, I think it was one of his last podcasters. I can't remember his name, darn it, but
Was it
he
the
just had
physics?
very yeah, I think it was. He
Yeah.
had such a beautiful, simple, almost cliche message, but it's that glass half full thing,
Dr.
and
Richard
seeing
Allen
that.
Miller?
Yes, I believe that was him.
I
Yeah,
just
yeah, that was
had it on
amazing.
me.
Just have it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he had just that perfectly timed reminder for me to just see there's a lot. I've got a lot of growth going on right now. I'm writing a book. I have gone to work for a whole new audience of men that I have a very strong commitment to making strong men stronger. We
Cool.
need strong men on this earth. I used to talk about how women should take over the world, and now I realize, oh, that's just the global agenda. Stop that. Like, yes, women should be strong, but not powering over men and putting men down and disrespecting men and calling them all rapists, and that they're responsible for all this garbage on the earth. It's the biggest lie ever.
Hmm.
So that's a new thing. So yeah, going through lots of trials and tribulations, but coming out the other side, and I'm extremely grateful for my life, grateful for my son, grateful for my home, my relatively safe city that we live in, and the clean air that we breathe. I'm grateful for all the people like you that I meet around the world that can hear my message. That's like, wow, it gives me so much joy to be connecting with somebody who can actually understand what I talk about. grateful for my clients because they bring the best out in me. And yeah, it's endless. So much to be grateful for. So thank you for
That's
that question.
Well, that's beautiful. I love it. I have this book that I love by Ursula K. Le Guin called The Word for World is Forest, and the natives on this planet that she has imagined have a way of organizing their society where the men have sort of a lodge and so do the women, and they have equal and opposite functions and they work together to make decisions. And I've always loved that sort of vision of things
Mhm.
because I feel like it's the most balanced vision of how society could be that I think I've ever been given by an author, which is, I don't know if anyone out there listening has ever read her, but if you haven't, you should. She's amazing. It's really cool.
She is. I'm
So,
going to look up that book.
oh yeah, have
Mhm.
you read her before?
I read bits and pieces in past years, but
Ooh,
yeah, no, that sounds like it's bang on right now.
you'll love it because she also has examples in there of toxic masculinity, but also of empowered masculinity. So it's a pretty
Mm.
cool. And I feel like she does all that intentionally. So where are you going and where do you hope to end up?
I am building myself a world where more people can access this work of the archetypes. Again, working on this book, it'll be out sometime in the next year.
Woohoo! That's such a big
It's
deal.
a big process. It is a big deal. I've been promising myself to write for a long time. I've done a lot of writing, like blogging and all that kind of stuff, and daily writing, but never had the discipline to put things together in this deliberate way, and just have all my ducks in a row to be able to put my work out. So that's big. I want to be there in service to the women in my world and the men out there who maybe have a crash of some kind that they go through a devastation like my father did, or like I did, or like this client who walked through my door. I want to see men get strong. I'd like to have multiple books. I would like to be, yeah, just basically more of the same, more of what I am already doing.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I really want people to take advantage of all of the resources you offer because, unlike many kind of people who are offering services out there, you're one of the people who are doing it for all of the best possible reasons in ways that are genuinely soulfully helpful. So, where can people find more of you and access your works and your services?
Thank you so much for that. You can visit my website, bethmartens.com. And there is an opportunity to do the archetype quiz that you saw, the Merpreneur's Journey. I also have built a quiz for the guys because it's a little hard on their egos to go and read all the girly stuff and see all
Oh
the
yeah.
mermaids.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
there's a tab there for the guys called Four Kings. And so you can do the archetype quiz there. You get instant results. It takes just 5 minutes to find out where exactly you are on this journey of helping others to gain their freedom and through your life's work become valued in this world. There is a number of articles. There's a call on the nature child. If you go to my YouTube channel, there's a whole bunch of videos there that you can check out on each of the 8 archetypes that are on that Merpreneur's Journey.
Cool.
There's a course, a very inexpensive DIY course now that is a collection of all of those 8 archetypes with 18 hours of audios and a workbook for each archetype. I've got somebody going through it. It was really funny because he told me at the beginning, he said, at first I thought like, oh my God, what the heck did I sign up for? He didn't have a clue. He didn't even really know about archetypes, but he
Yeah.
vibed with who I am and what I was doing. And then he said he got halfway through the first module and he went like, wow, oh my God, this is enlightening. This is amazing.
Oh,
So
awesome.
yeah. It can be one of those, archetypes can mind wipe us. It can make us feel like we don't know anything. We go into the deep. When I was studying them, it became, daily, almost going asleep. It would knock me out. It would knock me unconscious because you have to go so deep beyond your conscious mind in order to start accessing. But that's why having a guide, having somebody to walk with you. I didn't have anyone to walk with at that point,
Yeah.
and it was really difficult for me. But having someone to walk with and all that work that they would have done can make it easier for you to walk. So that's overall my goal
I
on
love
that.
it. I love that you're offering that. And I just want to kind of also say to people who are listening and thinking about this that you don't have to be in the middle, or rather, you don't have to be looking at like, oh, what am I going to do next? And how can, and Beth help me accomplish that. But also, if you're dealing with something that doesn't seem to be solvable or going away, like the things that you've described in your own life that you've come up against and overcome. It's like that transformation was the key to solving problems that maybe even seem unrelated to people. So I just encourage everyone to think about how they could be helped with their lives.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. And this has been your electric, concentric, analog dose of wisdom, according to Beth Martens. Beth, thank you so much for sharing with us all today.
What a pleasure to be in part of this discussion with you. I absolutely loved it.
Thank you. Always we will be asked to go into the darkness. Always we will feel we cannot possibly do it. Always when we look around, we will notice that we are not actually alone after all, that someone has come along to offer us a candle, that the sword we found just the other day is exactly the sword we needed to slay the exact demon we find we must encounter. Always we will be led into the darkness, and always we will be led back out again. It is in the darkness that we find that we had the light all along, and now we know how to share it with others. That is the point of the journey, friends. So as you travel your own path, do it well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.